Good day from Te Whanganui, Atara, which is Wellington in Aotearoa, New Zealand. I am Paul Platen. I'm excited to be taking part in this discussion today and talking to you about a subject which I'm extremely passionate about. I will lean on my learned experience and some of the day-to-day operational realities that exist in some of my client environments to give you an idea of how we need to learn at the speed of machine identities. Now, the world is moving at exponential rates. Because we are living in such exponential times, because our children are currently being educated for careers which don't exist yet, because we are battling with hybrid working environments, understanding Gen Z, understanding Gen Alphas, understanding how to work with them. And we are also in the world where machine identities and machines are exploding. The research tells us that by 2023, by and large, there'll be approximately 16.8 billion mobile devices. There'll be about 15.1 billion IoT connected devices, and these will be increasing exponentially by 2 billion every single year. Now, if you add to that the fact that quantum computing and quantum supremacy will be around approximately by April 14, 2030, then we are in for a very interesting and a very wild ride. But that makes us consider something else. And that is, what have we been doing while all this has been going on? What have we been doing while we are been focusing on human identities and focusing on multi-factor authentication and focusing on how those things influence our lives? Well, it's easy to have a dystopian view about it and say, well, these machines are going to be there and they are going to take over our lives. They're going to take over our jobs. There'll be no more jobs for people. But there's also the utopian view. And that view says that when we have these machines and as these machines increase, they give us the ability to do things smarter, to do things faster, and to do things more efficiently. I thought I'd do some quick basics around machine identities. Now, machine identities are generally accepted to be established and created by the use of digital certificates. Now, digital certificates come from a public key infrastructure. Now, they have a finite lifetime sometimes. We have, and we all will experience the fact that in our organizations, those who set up public key infrastructure and issue digital certificates often do it for lifespans or periods that are longer than what we would appreciate. I myself have experienced that in some of my client bases, certificates have been issued for between 50, 100, and yes, I've even had one that had been issued with a lifetime of 999 years. And so that brings a different perspective on this management of machine identities. There's also the fact that it can be created by anyone who has access to the infrastructure, anyone who has admin privileges, and in fact, anyone who has a credit card can go online and create a digital certificate, which they can then use to establish a machine identity. I think we will agree that that is not the ideal situation for us to be in. But more importantly, as organizations and as a community, we understand that these digital certificates, these machine identities, expire at the most inopportune time. They expire on a weekend, they expire on a public holiday, they expire at night. And as a result, it influences what we have to do and how we have to respond and react to these events. But it's also true that we are living in a different world. Our landscape is absolutely changing and has changed. And so as a result, where we have been sure and we have been confident in our ability to address the human factor in identity, the human identity with multi-factor authentication, with identity and access management solutions, with privileged access management, this new world that we are in is creating kind of a perfect storm. And this perfect storm is driven by our customer demands. They are demanding more from us in terms of usability. They are demanding more from us in terms of security. And that is giving rise to more competition in the sector. And where there's more competition, there's more rapid pace of development. With rapid pace of development, we start understanding concepts like shifting left in our DevOps cycle, shifting right in our DevOps cycle, and the DevSecOps component of what we do. But when you add to that there's a lot of multidimensional and multifunctional transformation projects that give rise to more advanced cybersecurity threats. It's not the same as it was a couple of years ago. And then you add to that the explosion of machine identities. And the statistics and the research that are out there tells us that we are not wrong in terms of the numbers and the amount of machines that are out there that do work for us. And then you consider quantum computing and what that's going to mean in our industry. And then finally, you consider the fact that globally, there's a shortage of skills in the technology sector. And these 10 items all contribute towards this perfect storm that affects our business, it affects our bottom line, it affects our confidence, and it affects our security programs. Now, this perfect storm that is created, it may make people believe that things aren't going to go well. Our customers are realizing that there are two actors on every network. They've come to the realization that they have for years neglected the machine identities. And they're now having to play catch up so that they can manage their risks more efficiently. Billions and billions of dollars have been spent on machine identities, on human identities, and how that impacts machine identities. And no one's thought about how are we going to work in this new world. And so our customers realize that machine identities are everywhere. My customers are realizing that machine identities are growing at an alarming rate. They have eventually realized that our machine identities are connected to everything. And they have finally realized that the machine identities are at risk. And because that's the case, they're demanding more things from us than traditional approaches to security, like antivirus or firewalls or any of those traditional security mechanisms. They're now demanding of us that we provide them with visibility. They're demanding from us that our solutions are scalable to keep up with the growing pace. They're demanding automation. They are demanding certainty of the identity that's being used. And they are demanding that we are able to monitor and be agile in how we do our work. Because the agility that we have to respond to compromises in digital certificates and in public infrastructure is only supported by resilience. And that resilience is also supported by repeatable processes. And so our customers making this realization is saying, well, now I need zero trust. But they're not quite sure what that means. And by means of an analogy, nobody wakes up in the morning and wants to buy an electric drill or a hammer. They wake up in the morning and they want a hole in a wall. We want to finish projects that we've been nagged about for the last 6 months. And just as that, no one wakes up in the morning going, I want to manage machine identities. We wake up in the morning and we say we want trust. We want trusted identities and we want trusted transactions. And for us to achieve this trust, we have to manage the identity lifecycle and everything that it can access. And so as we look at what the zero trust means, and there is enough information, I'm not going to go into what zero trust is and give you a lesson on zero trust, but it means trust everything, trust nothing, and verify everything. And that means it has to be done throughout the entire life cycle of the identity, from creation to retirement. It means that we have to authenticate, authorize, and continually validate the identity before giving it access to anything. And this is the tenet of what zero trust is. But for us, it means that once you have established the trusted identity, once you have that identity that you can trust, then zero trust assists by verifying, by authorizing, and maintaining the trust that we need in our transactions. And so we see in this ecosystem, we first have to have that trusted identity. And that is then supported by this methodology and this framework of trusting nothing and verifying everything. But what's important for us is that we manage the machine identity first. And so my banking clients and my government clients and your organization will come to you with a problem. They need to have zero trust, but they have no idea how many machine identities we have. We are busy with rapid development cycles, having to keep up with increased competition. Being first to market is everything. And again, affects our bottom line, affects our profits, affects our budgets. We also don't have enough skills to manage all of this. And so our businesses bring these problems to us and say, how do we effectively include a zero trust framework? And what's it got to do with this machine identity management thing that I've been hearing about? Well, when we consult and when we advise and when we implement solutions, we follow a 5-step methodology, a 5-step approach that'll help you to be able to see the link between zero trust and machine identity management. And that is quite simply along the lines of visibility, management, automate, monitor, and enforce. The first step is around knowing what we don't know, compiling that inventory, being able to report on and have an understanding of where our risk lays, where our identities live, what their context is, and how they speak to each other. Then we centrally manage and we gain control of these machine identities from a central place. We integrate them with our service desk systems, with our CMDBs as different configuration items. We manage that life cycle from beginning to end. And once we have a handle on that, then we start removing all of these manual processes so we can improve security, so we can improve efficiency, and we can improve ease of use for our developers and for our certificate consumers and for our machine identity creators. That automation brings about so much cost saving and so much certainty. Second, last, we monitor. And this monitor is a continuous process. We monitor the compliance of our network. We monitor the compliance of our machine identities. We monitor compliance against best practices. We monitor our processes to make sure that they are still best fit for what our organization needs. And then finally, we enforce. And this is not an enforcement as in a policeman and as in a punishment or as in making sure everybody knows what went wrong. This is an enforcement that includes things like remediation, where we've monitored, where we have the visibility, and we find those machine identities, and we find where they are not compliant with standards, where they may have be using the wrong algorithm, where they may be duplicated across the entire environment. We remediate that, we fix it. And because we've automated our processes, because we've automated our functions, that remediation is easier. We enforce standards that are coming out and best practices like the CA Browser Forum, where we are limiting the lifetime of certificates. We look at post-quantum algorithms. We look at 204 8-bit algorithms that need to be replaced. We can then monitor and make sure that we are using the correct digital certificates to create trusted machine identities. And we then enforce that corporate policy to make sure that our security posture is as good as it possibly can be. We've done this all the time with our human identities. We have good visibility over Active Directory. We manage everything from a central Azure AD. We automate the onboarding and the group policy orchestration. We do all these things for human identities, but we have neglected that in terms of our machine identities. And so when we consider what we have to do, we have 5 things that are important for us to take away. And these 5 things are cybersecurity and our efforts move at the speed of trust. Trust is the most important commodity when we are creating identities, both for humans and for machines. And if we don't have that trust, then we will not be able to trust the correct identity. When there's no rigor in our processes, when there's no understanding of what that machine identity is, then we will not know who to trust. And in our programs, we have to trust the right identity. And that means that we have to manage all of our machine identities. Managing all our machine identities means that visibility, monitoring, automation, and compliance is part of the most important makeup of that framework. And then we look at zero trust and machine identity management are not mutually exclusive. You cannot have one without the other. To implement a zero trust program, you have to realize that machine identity management is the foundation of any zero trust strategy. Because we've explained earlier, and we all know that it is trust nothing, but verify everything. And when we have to verify an identity, if we aren't managing that machine identity, if we aren't having processes that securely create that machine identity, then we fail in our ability to have zero trust. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you and to bring those 5 things across so that you can improve and work on your machine identity programs in order to have a zero trust strategy that is going to be effective in your organizations. Thank you very much.